look forward to it opening. And what is particularly important, Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge, over $4 billion.
The physical construction of Windsor's newest border crossing is complete. Everyone's mind is, when will the Gordie Howe International Bridge open?
Talks are continuing quietly so they don't trigger U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, the major part of the construction has been completed, and the corporation in charge of the span told reporters yesterday
Canada just finished a $6.4 billion bridge between Detroit and Windsor. Canada paid for every cent of it. And right now, Canadian officials are holding secret talks, not to announce when the bridge will open, but to hide it from Donald Trump. One official told CTV News they want to avoid triggering, quote, the kooks and crackpots in Washington.
We're not seeing anything right now that would push us necessarily into summer. It is still going through that testing process, but we're very focused on meeting that spring timeline.
So there it is, still no firm date for the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge. Heather Grondin says the focus right now is on testing and troubleshooting systems.
One bridge, one president, and a Canadian Prime Minister who just stopped asking for permission. On April 16th, CTV News reported that the opening date of the Gordie Howe International Bridge is being, quote, quietly negotiated behind closed doors.
talks are continuing quietly so they don't trigger U.S. President Donald Trump.
Officials on both sides of the border confirmed the reason. They want to avoid drawing Donald Trump's attention and provoking another public confrontation. Publicly, the bridge authority is pointing to technical issues. Heather Grondin, Chief Relations Officer at the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, says the delays involve the tolling system, the traffic management center, and aesthetic lighting that still needs recalibration.
Charge of the span told reporters yesterday they're making the final adjustments to the $6.4 billion bridge. A spokesperson for the minister overseeing the bridge said the exact opening date depends on the completion of the ongoing quality reviews and testing, as well as those commissioning activities.
But the real story is political. Earlier this year, Trump threatened to block the bridge's opening unless the United States was, quote, fully compensated for everything we have given Canada.
We begin with President Trump's threat this evening to block the highly anticipated opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge between Detroit and Windsor, Ontario.
President Trump threatening to block the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge right behind me has come as a shocking development to so many people and has frustrated politicians both here in Michigan and across the border in Ontario.
Here is the problem with that demand. Canada gave Trump nothing on this bridge. Canada paid for all of it, every dollar, and that is exactly why this story matters. Let's look at the numbers, because the numbers tell the real story. The total construction cost is $6.4 billion. 100% of it is funded by Canada.
I explained that Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge, over $4 billion, that the ownership is shared between the state of Michigan and the government of Canada.
Zero U.S. taxpayer contribution. All toll revenue will flow back to Canada to repay the construction debt. That is the core of Trump's grievance.
There's a question as to the proceeds of tolls, etc., and so there's going to be a negotiation on that front into how that bridge should be treated. If it's going to be going into the U.S.
According to the agreement, Canada will collect tolls until it recoups the costs related to construction. After that, they're split between Canada and Michigan. One former ambassador says there's a reason the president gets things so wrong.
The existing crossing, the privately owned Ambassador Bridge, is currently the busiest commercial trade crossing in North America. It is aging, congested, and operating beyond its design limits. Because of that, commercial truck traffic is already being pushed 60 miles north to the Blue Water Bridge, adding fuel costs, driver hours, and delay across the entire Canadian auto supply chain. According to economic analysis cited by Bridge Michigan, every week, the Gordie Howe Bridge stays closed costs up to $7 million in lost revenue. Meanwhile, over 12,000 transponders have already been ordered by commercial operators. The private sector is ready. The government is the one holding back. But why is Ottawa holding back? That's the next question. The Gordie Howe Bridge was announced over a decade ago. It was designed with one very specific purpose: to bypass the privately owned Ambassador Bridge and give Canada direct control over its most important trade corridor with the United States. Canada agreed to finance 100% of the project for one reason. Ottawa wanted to avoid US political interference. At the time, that looked cautious. Today, it looks strategic. Earlier in 2026, Trump publicly demanded that the United States be, quote, fully compensated before the bridge could open, despite contributing $0 to its construction. That demand came inside a much broader trade war: the tariff campaign, the alcohol ban, the lumber dispute, friction over the Arctic and defense files. Until this leak, the official line was simple: the bridge would open in spring 2026. No date, no ceremony. That silence was strategy. So what is actually at stake here? A lot more than a ribbon cutting. Start with the auto industry. Ford, GM and Stellantis run cross-border supply chains through Detroit and Windsor every single day. A shorter, faster route between their plants is worth billions of dollars over the long term. Then there's the trucking sector. That 60-mile detour to the Blue Water Bridge adds fuel costs, driver hours, and delivery delays that ripple through every Canadian manufacturer. For Canadian taxpayers, every week of delay is $7 million in lost toll revenue, money that was supposed to repay the $6.4 billion investment. Michigan businesses lose too. Detroit's logistics sector was banking on Gordie Howe traffic by the middle of this year. But the biggest impact is political. If Canada can open a major piece of infrastructure without Washington's approval, the precedent transfers to LNG terminals, to potash exports, to pipeline approvals, to Arctic ports. This isn't just a bridge. This is a test case. But here is what most of the mainstream coverage is missing. The leak itself is the strategy. For months, Ottawa played defense, quiet meetings, technical excuses, no opening date. Then suddenly, a Canadian source goes to Key TV News and essentially announces the secret: we are opening this bridge, we are just timing it around Trump's moods.
We've had over 5,000 accounts opened and over 12,000 transponders ordered through that process, and we expect more to come as we announce an opening date.
While we still don't know that date, it's become clear this crucial connection between the two countries is being held up by the temperament of President Trump.
That is not a leak by accident. That is Ottawa sending a message. And once you see it as a message, the whole story changes. Because the moment this story becomes public, Trump's leverage collapses. He can't block something if blocking it becomes the headline. He can't threaten a bridge that Canada already built with its own money without looking petty instead of tough. The political cost of retaliation is asymmetric, and Ottawa knows it. This fits a larger pattern that is starting to define Prime Minister Mark Carney's approach to Washington. Canada acts first, negotiates after. It is the same playbook Ottawa is running on Port of Churchill development, on GCAP fighter jet procurement, on critical minerals policy. Move the chess piece before Washington can object. For Carney, the upside is clean. He gets the infrastructure win. He gets the trade flow. He gets the toll revenue. And he gets the sovereignty narrative, all without firing a single public shot. The deeper pattern is this: Canadian infrastructure and resource decisions that used to run through Washington by default are now being rerouted through Ottawa by design. If the Gordie Howe Bridge opens on Canada's timeline, the template transfers to every future cross-border project. And that is the real stake here, not the ribbon cutting, the precedent. The Gordie Howe Bridge was supposed to be an infrastructure story. It has turned into the clearest test yet of whether Canada can act on its own sovereign decisions without waiting for Washington's permission slip. The bridge is built. The transponders are ordered. The trucks are waiting. The only question left is whether Carney opens this bridge on Canada's schedule, or whether Ottawa keeps negotiating the ribbon, cutting through Trump's Truth social feed. And if Carney blinks on this one, what is the next piece of Canadian infrastructure that becomes Trump's leverage?